Hello, John.
Hello, Barbara.
So today we're going to talk about dancing at the Crossroads. Sometimes when we think of dancing at the Crossroads, we think of a song that was released in the mid 90s. I think it was the Wolf Tones, and it's a song that's often played at the end of a night's music inside in a bar in Dublin City. I've often heard it, It's a fantastic song by them. But what we're actually talking about is dancing at the Crossroads in rural crossroads, usually on a Sunday evening, 18th to early 20th centuries, where a group of people would meet for music. You'd have the local fiddle player, the pipers, flute players, um, Irish dancers, and it was a place for matchmaking, courtship, community bonding, and then it all came to an end, and that's what we're going to talk about.
Yes, well, it certainly was a marvelous. I think I experienced one of them myself when I was younger, and it was a great occasion for people to meet of that and in that kind of a setting at a crossroads, coming from different parts of the community and meeting together and maybe then there might be a match from the meeting because they did know their family or that it was a very I'd say it was a family orientated, and I shouldn't wonder if fathers was there, especially because they would have had good sized families in them times. There wasn't just one or two children in a family, there was often several or more. And so the father could be there, particularly of the girls, to make sure that no harm come to them. Not that there did, but we have to take it into account that the father was there to do that. And so there was some order, if you like. And there was the pipers and the accordion players. And, it was a great opportunity for young people to meet at a time when there wasn't much opportunities for them to meet in the late in the early 20s and in the late in the early 90s and then in the late 80s, because it would have occurred and it was a way for them to come together and meeting and having a bit of a social occasion, weather permitting, because obviously it wouldn't be too comfortable on a Sunday evening and it's spilling. You couldn't have much fun at that, could you? So weather, it must have been with weather permitting. And bearing in mind that fathers would have been there too, and maybe fathers of boys to make sure that they behaved themselves too, show respect. But I think they did show respect. That was a time when they did show respect to each other. And in my way of my memories of even in my time, respect was a fundamental thing that was shown to by both, and it was a grand way to meet, wasn't it? And this music and we'd say a late spring, early summer, and maybe even autumn. Before it got dark, and then they'd be meeting in homes and having conversations and chats and that type of thing. And don't forget, wakes were a very important ingredient in local tradition them times. There was wakes in houses. I was at one of them myself, and where the father was laid out, and I think I had a whiskey provided, and you wouldn't get two or three of them. I just got one, and there was a crowd there, and one's coming and going and all the rest of it. And this is the way it was. And there was in houses sometimes and weeks. And it was a very family orientated, and the neighbours come in. And it was far better than now it's in funeral parlours, which probably is safe enough too. And the families or the relatives are there, and you're shaking hands with them, and the deceased is in the coffin, and you're blessing them or say, well, I do, and usually because it's usually the container and you bless them. Now we're talking about dancing at the crossroads. I went on to wakes, but because the same thing applied. So it was a great way of meeting local people and coming together and having this great respect. and a bit of dancing. And there would have been, I don't know whether it would have been old time waltzes or anthem. It might have been more communal, like Katie dancing with two, with a boy and a girl and all the rest. Because I did that when I was young in Dublin in the Irish club, but it was all that Cayley dancing with the McCusker brothers and all the other great bands, Cayley bands that was in vogue at that time. And beautiful, chordy music, like what you might have heard at the Crossroads. You just couldn't stay sitting down when you hear that lovely music. Up you got in your hind legs and out you went. Didn't matter what. And then you
Sure.
were marching, going and twirling around and all the rest of it. It was lovely. And so this is the Cayley dancing now. What happened that it discontinued?
Okay, so what happened was under the Eamon de Valera government, they introduced the Public Dance Halls Act of 1935. And that basically effectively put an end to the crossroad dancing and all these events were held in dance halls. And then, of course, it moved on from there into the show bands in the 60s and the whole lot in the dance halls as well. So that's basically what happened. They decided to make it a more of a community event where you'd have to pay in the door. And I suppose, look, it was an economic decision to raise money for the communities, but it killed off an important social aspect, as we said, for music,
It did.
storytelling,
It did. Well,
matchmaking,
well,
the whole
well,
lot.
a cultural aspect. We had matchmakers, of course. They had an important role. And storytellers. There was all this. There was more than one thing. It was storytellers too. People had gathered in the house to hear the storyteller recounting stories of times past that they would have forgotten about. But at that time, um, when De Valera did that, which was a very strange move, because that was during the economic war with Britain between 1932 and 1938, when, in other words, we had the income in this country was decimated. There was little or nothing for anyone to sort of do or to be, and farmers would have suffered grievously in the country. So for him, a time for him to do the like of that was what was the strangest move in my time that I can't even understand it, considering that he was often talking about the history of the country and all the rest of it. And for to stop the dancing at the crossroads, I can't understand such a stupid move and that didn't, to me, make sense, considering there was an economic war between 1932 and 1938. And then that was nearly done. And then it was the British saw that they were going to suffer because it was a war looming with Germany, and it was over, and they had the ports. They had the four ports, so that we got them back. So, but for De Valera to do that in 1935, when he had to contend with the business of the economic war, it was a very peculiar time to stop it when really people didn't have the money to be going to these halls or at them. And then, of course, in my time, there was marquees in the summertime and bands come and I often danced in these marquees and they had the floors and all, it wasn't just on the ground, floors. And they were often very slippy because they put the stuff on it so it wouldn't be, and you're dancing there because you could skid and behind. No offense, but it was the marquees. That was the nearest thing to the country business as you could get. But no, I think that was a cultural business. It might have stopped of its own accord with modern times, but it had in the 1930s it should have been allowed to continue until such time as the income of people improved and they were able to do things. Because even in my time, income didn't keep up with what your expenditure was you know. And when I was working on it, it was only when I kind of improved and got better jobs that I was kind of able to dig this, because tax was outrageous in this country. We were paying, I was paying over 50% in tax on a modest salary when I was in my prime. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I
So,
think. I think, look,
Yeah,
from a cultural aspect and from for musicians and stuff, the Crossroads would have been their main source of their outlet for the Crossroads was basically their stage, and then suddenly the stage was gone. So you'd lone pipers who probably wouldn't be allowed into the dance halls because the dance halls would have been very they would have been strict on they wanted bigger bands and bands that would attract a pay at the door
yeah,
kind of thing, you know. So a lot of people lost out, and I think a lot of people also met at these events. There was matchmaking, as we said, and there was husbands met their, wives there, and it was a real
it
family
was.
event, and it was a shame.
They were keeping an eye on things as well, and then they were enjoying the bit of music and the sort of thing. It was free. There was no charges for it, and you see this obsession with charging for every blinking thing is it destroys that sort of spontaneity that our brothers had at that time, our brothers and sisters, and they're right to let it continue on till it petered out for one reason or other. And people, it still might have been taking place, just every so often as a memory of it, the same way as periodically mass is said in mass rocks in memory of our brothers and sisters that suffered so grievously that they had to get mass and mass rocks. We saw it ourselves when we visited Daniel O'Connor's home in Derry Lane and saw all the marvellous things that happened around there and the fact that there was a mass rock and people got mass and mass rocks even in that time. So we're talking about that kind of culture and that kind of history. And when people were coming together the way they were and had a bit of freedom, shall we say, we still were under the British, I think, at that time. Oh no, we weren't. When we started first, we were, but then there was the Valera. It was shame on him for doing such a thing in 1935 during an economic war when money was must have been as scarce as hen's teeth. In other words, who had money them times?
Who had money them times?
It
So
was
anyway, so
very few had money.
I think, look, we can call for the revival of some of these crossroad dances and festivals, and there are heritage
I'd love to,
festivals.
I'd
Fest
love to see it, and I might pay a visit there and see if I could go around without sort of capsizing or something like that. You know yourself as you're marching up the tree of life. But I'd love. I used to love the music. I love
well,
the music
there
that music that it's in your DNA. You just love it. I love it. That Cayley music, that melodeon and the pipes and all the rest of it. Oh, it uplifts you.
now there are some heritage
It
festivals
puts you
and
in good humour.
there are
Huh?
some there are some heritage festivals and local communities still stage crossroad dances today as a way of keeping the tradition alive. Where that is happening in Ireland, I have no idea. And if anybody knows, please make a comment on the video and they could tell us because I'd like to
That's
see
right,
it.
yeah. And make a comment. And I'd love to see it at least come on back just for once, for to remember those times, to see it coming back and the musicians at the Crossroads the way they were.
Yeah.
And I think I was at one of them one time when I was young. And you know something? It was as happy an occasion as you could wish to meet.
Well, there you go.
There was friendship at it. It wasn't just a kind of boy meets girl in this kind of a way with artificial lights and all the rest of it. This was open air stuff. It might have, as it got dusk. You see, don't forget in the summer, the evenings are bright up to about 11 or half 11 of a nice summer's evening. And so probably it would start at about probably 7 or 8 about that, and then finish at about half 10 or 11 in my time, I think. And I'd love to see it happening again,
Well, John
at
Malone,
least as a memory.
it's something that I will look into because it's something that I would like to see revived in Ireland. There's no reason why it shouldn't be revived, you know? I think it's a
Well,
very,
we'll invite those people that have any younger people that might have been heard about these things to come together in their local communities in the country and have the crossroads the music, really Cayley, in my opinion. It wouldn't have been just old time. It might have been an old time waltz, but everybody could join into it, including the older folk. It wasn't all young whippersnappers, more per to their elbow, of course, because we were all at that age when we went out and about. But suffice to say, I'd love to see it acted again, and people coming on the crossroads. What a great gift! Do you know something? It would have been a great tourist attraction, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
People
I mean,
dancing at
if you had a if you had a bus pulling up, a coach bus full of tourists, they'd love to see this kind of thing.
the wood. They would love it. And when we're, by the way, it's just well, it's say they should that shouldn't have been done away with because I think it goes on in other countries. In Africa, I think they dance out there in the public because they've better weather, of course. But I don't think they're having to go into halls all the time. There's no government interfering with them and say, well, you better get into a hall and fork out a few bob. They're out in the open as far as I see dancing around. Yeah, I think you've probably seen it too. And I don't know when you were in Algeria, did you see any dancing out in the open?
I didn't,
No.
but I can tell you that as a child in the 70s in Kerry, I did see it.
Yeah, you are. So, like, yeah, this is a great gift that we have of our culture. And I'd love to see it. I'd love to see here and there a business of having at least, in maybe not in this time of the year now, it's getting a bit dark in the evenings, but later on, when the summer, when the good weather comes, having a ceilidh at the crossroads. Because it would be usually ceilidh type music with accordions and fiddles and the violin and that. It must have been lovely because I heard it myself. And I'll tell you something, it'd lift your spirits. Beautiful.
It certainly would, John. Thank you very
And
much.
there might have been a singer
Mm.
at it as well, by the way. Don't forget that. If I was there, I'd be trying to I'd be singing.
John Malone, if you were there, nobody would get a word in.
Well, you need to sing to and I'd say, Maestro, music if you please. Have you got a microphone? I never heard of it. And then I'd have to sing without a microphone.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, Oliver.
Bye now. Bye bye.
We know.